They say your eyes can adjust to the dark, but nothing prepares you for when the dark starts watching back. My name is Connor. I grew up in a small town in rural Pennsylvania, one of those places where there's more farmland than people, and everyone knows each other by name, whether you like it or not. Summers were slow, humid, and usually uneventful. But 2 years ago, in late July, something happened that none of us ever talk about. Not out of fear someone won't believe us, but because we're scared someone will. It started with the lights. I was home from college working part-time for my uncle, who owned a small auto repair shop off one of the back roads that twisted through the woods and farmland. That week had been brutal. Hot during the day, suffocating at night. I'd taken to driving around in the evenings just to cool off. No destination. Just windows down, music low, letting the night air roll in. One night I ended up driving out past the old Barrett farm, a place everyone in town sort of pretended didn't exist anymore. It had been abandoned since the early 2000s, after the Barretts vanished without a trace. No one ever bought the land. No one went near it. I wasn't trying to go there, honestly. I'd just taken a wrong turn down an unfamiliar stretch of road that seemed new but shouldn't have been. I remember passing a crooked mailbox with no name, and then fields, just endless, open fields of knee-high corn stretching into the blackness. That's when I saw them. 2 lights, low to the ground, glowing faintly yellow, like headlights but smaller and too far apart. They were deep in the field, perfectly still. I slowed down, rolled to a stop, and just stared. They weren't flickering, weren't moving. Just there. At first, I thought maybe it was a piece of farm equipment left on overnight, but that didn't make sense. It was too far from the road and too symmetrical. Then, they blinked out. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, the hairs on my arms standing straight up. Something about it felt wrong, like I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to. I told myself it was nothing, just the heat playing tricks on me, or maybe distant lights from another car. But that night, I had the first dream. In it, I was standing in the middle of that same field, only I couldn't move. The corn was taller now, up to my shoulders, and I could hear it rustling all around me. The wind was completely still, but something was brushing against the stalks, circling me. Then the lights appeared again, floating a few feet above the ground, only this time I realized they weren't lights at all. They were eyes, wide, pale, human, but not. And they were staring right at me. I woke up drenched in sweat. I didn't tell anyone at first because it was just a dream, right? But the next night I drove out that way again. Part of me was curious. Part of me felt like something was pulling me back. This time the lights were closer. They appeared again, just beyond the ditch at the edge of the field. Same soft glow, same silent, motionless stare. I shut off my car and just watched. I don't know why. I should have driven off. Every instinct was screaming at me to leave, but I couldn't. It felt like I was being dared. Then something happened I'll never forget. The corn near the lights started to part, slowly, deliberately, like something big was walking through it. But there was no sound, not the crunch of stalks, not a footstep, just movement. And then I saw it, just a glimpse. It was tall, taller than any man I've ever seen. Pale skin, long limbs, no clothes, and its face was completely blank. No mouth, no nose, just those glowing yellow eyes. I slammed the car into reverse and sped out of there like my life depended on it, because in that moment I believed it did. Over the next week, things got worse. I started seeing the lights in other places, outside my bedroom window, across the parking lot at the repair shop, in my rearview mirror when no one was behind me. And every night, the dreams came back. More vivid, more terrifying, Sometimes I'd wake up standing at my window, not knowing how I got there. Other times I'd swear I could hear the corn rustling just outside my house, even though the nearest field was miles away. I finally broke down and told my cousin Dylan. He'd grown up around here too and had always been into weird folklore and ghost stories. When I told him about the lights and the dreams, he didn't laugh. He didn't even look surprised. Instead, he said, "I think you saw a watcher." I asked him what the hell that meant. He said it was an old legend, older than the town. Stories passed down about creatures that lived in the fields, things that only came out at night. People called them watchers because that's all they did, watch, until they didn't. He said they were known to fixate on people, usually loners, wanderers, people who stumbled into places they shouldn't. Once a watcher locked onto you, it didn't stop. It followed, it waited, it watched, and then eventually, it took. I told him that sounded like complete bullshit, and I wanted to believe that. I really did. But I also knew what I'd seen. That night, I didn't go out driving. I stayed in, locked the doors, closed the blinds. I tried to sleep on the couch with the TV on, but at some point I must have dozed off. I woke up around 3 a.m. The house was dead silent. The TV was off, and the front door was wide open. I didn't move for a full minute. I just laid there, breathing shallow, trying to hear anything. Eventually, I got up, heart pounding, and walked slowly to the door. Outside was pitch black, but across the street, in the empty field beyond the trees, I saw them. 2 yellow lights, closer than ever. I backed up, slammed the door, locked it 3 times, and ran to the back of the house. Every window stayed shut that night. Every light stayed on. But somehow I still dreamed. This time I wasn't alone in the field. There were others, 6 people, faces I barely recognized, all of them pale, thin, like they'd been drained of color. Their eyes glowed yellow, and they were all watching me. The tall one stepped forward. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. It leaned in until its face was inches from mine. I could feel cold breath on my skin. And then it whispered, "You saw us. Now we see you." I woke up screaming. After that night, I packed my things and left town early. Told my uncle something came up. I haven't been back since, but I still see them sometimes. On long drives, I'll catch a glimpse of yellow lights in the fields, or I'll dream of rustling corn and faceless watchers. And every time I wonder, when will they stop watching? Or worse, when will they come for me? I grew up spending summers in a small lakeside town in Vermont, one of those places that seems frozen in time. Quaint cottages, a general store that closed at 6, and neighbors who waved whether they knew you or not. My family owned a small cabin on the lake, and ever since I was a kid, we'd spend the whole summer there. The summer I turned 20, a few of my old friends and I decided to spend a long weekend at the lake. We were all home from college, nostalgic for the old days. There were 4 of us, me, my best friend Cam, and 2 others, Nate and Jesse. We packed up coolers, threw some sleeping bags into the cabin, and planned to spend the weekend fishing, drinking, and being generally stupid. The first night, after a long day on the water, we decided to go night fishing. The lake wasn't huge, but big enough that you could find coves with no lights, no houses, just pitch-black water and thick woods pressing in on all sides. We grabbed a couple rods, a portable speaker, and a lantern, and set off in my dad's old aluminum fishing boat. It had a tiny outboard motor and squealed like hell when you turned it on, but it got the job done. We motored out to the far end of the lake where the tree line was densest, and the water got weirdly still. Cam said it was the best fishing spot. We weren't really serious about fishing, of course. We were just looking for an excuse to be out on the water, drink, and maybe scare ourselves a little. At first, it was great. We cast our lines, cracked some beers, told dumb stories, and let the quiet creep in. The lantern gave off just enough light to see each other, but everything beyond the boat was black. Not dark, black. You couldn't see the trees, the water, nothing. Just soundless void. Then Cam said, "Hey, turn off the lantern. Let's sit in the dark for a minute." It took some convincing, but eventually we killed the light. It was disorienting, the kind of darkness where you can't tell if your eyes are open. All you could hear was the gentle lapping of water and the occasional creak of the boat. We sat there for a few minutes, whispering like kids at a sleepover, trying to freak each other out. Then we heard a splash. Close. Not a fish-jumping kind of splash. Too heavy, like something large entering the water. We all froze. I asked, "Did one of you throw something?" They hadn't. Another splash, this time behind the boat. Closer. Jesse turned the lantern back on. The light reflected off the water, but we didn't see anything. No boats, no animals, nothing. "I think it's just a beaver or something," Nate said, but he didn't sound convinced. We decided to call it and head back. Cam turned the engine over and we started the slow ride back toward the cabin. But as we turned around, Cam stopped the boat. "What?" I asked. He pointed, dead ahead. On the shore, maybe 50 feet away, was a person, just standing there, at the edge of the trees, on the rocks. We all stared. I called out, "Hello?" No response. They didn't move. Jesse asked if it could be one of the neighbors, but we were too far from any property line, and it was almost midnight. Then the person stepped into the water. We watched them wade in, slowly. No flashlight, no sound. Just walking into the lake like it was nothing. We were frozen. The engine was still running, but none of us thought to move. Then Cam whispered, "There's another one." To our left, maybe 20 feet away, another figure stepped out from the trees. Then another to our right. 3 people walking into the lake from 3 different points. No lights, no sound, just walking. That was enough. Cam gunned the engine and turned us hard, pointing back toward the cabin. But the lake suddenly felt wrong, like we were being watched from every direction. Jesse looked back and muttered, "They're in the water, swimming." I didn't believe him, until I turned and saw one of the figures, barely visible, their face just above the surface, making slow but deliberate strokes toward us. We weren't moving fast. The boat's motor was old and slow, and it felt like it was taking forever to cross the lake. Cam kept looking back, muttering, "What the hell? What the hell?" I shined the lantern behind us, but there was nothing. No splash, no movement, just the same still water. But then a hand slapped the side of the boat. We all screamed. Jesse nearly dropped his beer. Cam almost swerved the boat into a log. I turned the lantern to the side just in time to see a pale hand vanish beneath the water. We hit the gas and didn't stop until we were at the dock. We didn't even tie the boat properly, just jumped out, half tripping over each other to get to the cabin. Slammed the door, locked it, and didn't speak for a few minutes. We stayed up all night watching the water from the front window, but never saw anyone else. No boats, no figures, no splashing. The next morning, we found the boat still gently bobbing against the dock. Everything looked normal. We tried to laugh it off. Maybe it was a prank or we were just drunk and imagining things. But deep down, we all knew we weren't. A few days later, I asked one of the local shopkeepers if there were any weird stories about the lake. He just gave me a look and said, "Old lakes remember things." I've been back to the lake since then, but I've never gone out at night again. And I never will. met this guy named Caleb through a co-worker. We all went out for drinks one Friday night after work. I didn't know Caleb beforehand, but he seemed cool. We vibed over music and ended up talking for most of the night. My co-worker eventually left, and it ended up being just Caleb and me hanging out at the bar until close. We exchanged Instagrams. He had a typical profile for a mid-20s guy, lots of pics from hikes, breweries, and random cities. He looked normal, friendly even. That weekend, Caleb replied to one of my stories, just a clip of a playlist I posted, and we started chatting more. He said he had extra tickets to a small music fest about an hour outside the city the following weekend and asked if I wanted to come. I hesitated, but he assured me it was chill. Outdoors, decent crowd, and he had gone last year with some friends. I figured why not? I asked a couple friends to join, but they were busy or just not into the idea of a road trip with some random guy I'd only met once. Fair, but I felt like I could handle myself. He picked me up that Saturday morning. His car was spotless, music low, and he offered me coffee right off the bat, saying he stopped by a local place I mentioned liking in one of my stories. I remember thinking, wow, he's either super thoughtful or a little too observant. But I let it slide. The drive was uneventful. We talked a lot, and honestly, I thought maybe I'd found a new solid friend, or at least a chill hang. When we got to the festival, everything seemed totally normal. He even knew some people there, waved at them, made introductions. Nothing felt off. We watched a couple bands, had some drinks, grabbed food. Then later, when the sun started going down, he asked if I wanted to stay overnight instead of driving back late. I thought we were going home that night, but he said he booked a cabin nearby just in case. It caught me off guard, but he wasn't pushy, just said I could crash and drive back whenever. I should have said no. I know that now. We got to the cabin, which was one of those tiny ones you can rent for cheap. It was clean, cozy, and surrounded by trees. He showed me around, pointed out that there was a pull-out bed I could use, and then offered me another drink. I accepted because, I don't know, I wasn't getting red flags at the time, just minor orange ones. We stayed up late talking, and then I finally decided to crash. I set up the pull-out, plugged in my phone next to it, and knocked out. In the middle of the night, I woke up to what I thought was the sound of footsteps. I sat up, looked around, but didn't see anything. The cabin was small. The only room that wasn't visible from the pullout was the tiny bathroom. I figured maybe Caleb just got up to pee. I lay back down, but I had a hard time falling asleep after that. Something just didn't sit right. The next morning, I noticed my phone was in a different spot. I had left it charging on the floor next to the bed, but now it was sitting on the kitchen counter, unplugged. I asked Caleb if he moved it, and he shrugged, saying maybe I did while half asleep. I wanted to believe that, but something about his face when he said it, too casual, too rehearsed, made me doubt it. Later that day, we went for a walk through the woods near the cabin. He wanted to show me this overlook he claimed was a hidden gem. The trail was barely marked, and the deeper we walked, the quieter it got. At some point, I realized we hadn't passed another person in over 30 minutes. I joked that he better not be trying to murder me, and he just laughed, a little too hard.